what's up YouTube? You're watching Ready Set Drone, and today I have the EXO Blackhawk 2 Pro. This just came out. EXO just released it a couple days ago. Very excited to check it out. I've been flying it for a couple of weeks now, and I want to share with you what I like about it, what I don't like about it, and who I think this drone is for. So stay tuned. All right, so EXO is a company that recently became a part of Hubsan, and I'm not exactly sure of all the backstory. You can go look at their website to see that. I feel like EXO wants to be that kind of mid-range drone maker that fills the niche between those cheaper toys and the more expensive prosumer/professional drones that a lot of us know and love. This is the EXO Blackhawk 2 Pro. This is definitely a competitor to some of the mid-sized foldable drones that DJI and Autel have out there. And I'm gonna tell you my first impression of it just right out of the box. It is very solid feeling. It feels very well made. It doesn't feel cheap. And I love the way these little legs kind of fold up. I've never seen a drone that folds like this. It doesn't have two long legs that kind of cross each other and have to be unfolded in a certain direction or a certain order. It has short legs that pop out like this, has two little landing skids here in the front that pop down. And I know in some other drones, these are actually antennas, so maybe that's what that is, an antenna that pops down, but it also kind of keeps it level. It just feels really solid and well made. The battery sits on top like this, and it has a 3S 11.1 volt battery that is, I believe, an intelligent battery. It does tell you whether it's charged up here with little dots on the front. This one's got 3 little dots going because I've flown it. And it pops right in place just fine. Seems like it's really solid in there. A 3-axis gimbal, a 48 megapixel camera, and I will tell you the highlight of this thing, the camera is actually really, really good. The footage that I've taken definitely exceeded my expectations, but we'll get to that in a second. It also comes with the remote control, which again feels pretty solid. It does have Hubsan branding on the top of it, which is interesting because, like I said, EXO is a part of Hubsan. They're related somehow. This remote holds your phone down here on the bottom, and it fits in there pretty well. I've been using it, and I like the way it fits in there. It comes with a micro USB cable that goes to Lightning or micro USB or USB-C, depending on the type of phone you use. And it also has a slot down here in the bottom where you can store the sticks, which I like a lot because if you want to put this into a bag, like this bag right here, storing the sticks is a very convenient thing in there so that they're not sticking up. Now, pretty standard, has an LCD screen here on the top that has some data when you're flying, which is nice. If you're flying and your phone dies, it does also charge your phone while you're flying, which is also kind of nice. But I like the LCD screen. I know that the original Mavic had that on it, and then DJI kind of got away from it in some of their cheaper drones, but I do like it because it gives you information like distance and speed and stuff like that. Now, it does come with a nice carrying case, which I also appreciate. I know early on, a lot of drones just came in a box and you basically had to find something else to put them in. And depending on which package you get, you'll get 1 battery, 2 batteries, 3 batteries. It does have a solution for charging multiple batteries in series, meaning that it'll do one, then the next one, then the next one, then the next one. But I do appreciate a nice bag that is fitted for it, and everything does fit pretty nicely in here with the Blackhawk 2 Pro. And finally, just to be clear, there is a Blackhawk 2 and a Blackhawk 2 Pro. Be careful which one you buy because you want to make sure you get the one you want. The Blackhawk 2 is $649. It does have a 4K camera, but that is a 12 megapixel camera with a smaller sensor, and it doesn't have obstacle avoidance like this one has. The Blackhawk 2 Pro is $799 for a single battery and does have a 48 megapixel camera, a bigger sensor, and has obstacle avoidance in the front, back, and the bottom. So this is the Pro. It's the one I'd recommend you get. It's not a whole lot more. So as I said, I was pretty impressed with how this feels just right out of the box. It feels high quality, feels well built, and after flying it for a period of time, I can tell you that is the case. It does pretty well. It doesn't feel like a cheap toy drone. It flies pretty well in the wind. It has a decently long battery life. They say 35 minutes. I was flying it mostly over water, so I was bringing it in around 20, 25 minutes because I wanted to be careful down at 40%. That's actually the default setting on the remote control is 40%. It will tell you, hey, your battery's getting low. But when you're out over the water, you don't want to push it too much. But never had any issue with it getting back to me. Still had plenty of battery when I landed, and I was still getting 20, 25 minutes of flight time. But the thing that blew me away the most, again, is the picture quality. The camera does a great job with colors. It's kind of saturated, but I actually like that look, the more saturated look. The photos are 48 megapixels, so they're big photos with lots of detail and lots of resolution. And the video quality at 4K just looks fantastic. I'm shooting at 4K 30. It will also do 2.7K and 1080, I believe, which I didn't try at all, but it'll do a higher frame rate at those. But I was shooting 4K 30 and really, really liked the way it was looking. Now, in terms of the app, I was using the iOS version. I'm not sure about the Android version, but I'm sure they're very similar. And it's a decent app. It does have this kind of weird thing where you often have to say, trust this computer, because it's plugged into the remote. And there were several times I had to go in and punch in my passcode on my phone in order to get it to activate. Not a huge deal. There was also kind of something a little bit strange with other drones. When you update firmware and stuff, you usually do that wirelessly through the remote control, your phone, and the drone itself. In this one, you actually take the USB plug and put it into the drone itself, and it updates directly to the drone via the USB plug to your phone and the app. So you unplug it from the remote control, plug it into the drone, and then let it do its thing for a little while. That was a little bit cumbersome, but not a huge deal versus doing it wirelessly. Now, as I said, the app is pretty good. It has a lot of features and functions in it. I didn't realize this has internal storage. I actually shot for a full day and then thought I had lost all the footage, but it turns out I was sending it to the internal storage of this thing, which was great because I was able to recover it. But ultimately, it has internal storage, I think 60 gigs of internal storage, and then it has the ability to put in a card. I'm using a 64 gig card, so I've got 124 gigs of storage, which is plenty. The app allows you to do things like format the card, do things like use smart shots, and also has a built-in gimbal leveler. And we'll talk more about that in a second because there were some issues with the gimbal not being level. Overall, the app feels pretty well made and certainly takes its cue from other apps in the drone space. If you know how to use one, you probably can figure this one out. And even if you don't, it's not that hard. There's just a lot to it that you can get into. So kind of spend a little time playing with it before you take off the first time. It does have automated flight modes like Droney and Orbit and Hyperlapse. The Droney and the Orbit actually work really well. I tried both of those several times and was impressed with how well those two worked. There were some that I haven't tried yet, but I will, like the Follow and the Waypoints. I imagine those will be pretty good, but I will tell you the Hyperlapse leaves a lot to be desired. They're very, very shaky. I've done a couple of hyperlapses and they just look very shaky. It doesn't stabilize as well in the air. It must be moving around with GPS, or the gimbal's not as stable as other drones, because I've seen hyperlapses that look smooth as can be. These hyperlapses look very, very shaky, and I wouldn't even try to use them, quite honestly. That's one thing that was a little disappointing. In terms of flyability, it flies pretty well. You can actually go through obstacles and around things and over things. It does have obstacle avoidance that works really well. In front, back, and below, it does not have obstacle avoidance to the sides, so don't, fly it over like this and whack into something sideways. But front and back obstacle avoidance work well enough, and if you turn them off, you can fly through some fairly tight spots, through trees. I did a little bit of that myself and had a good time with it, flying past yourself and over water and under things, and a lot of fun, and it is fairly maneuverable and easy to fly in that fashion. Okay, so I've got the obstacle avoidance turned on the Blackhawk 2. Gonna try walking in front of it. Let me actually start recording video on it as well. And I'll do a screen recording. Okay, so I've got obstacle avoidance turned on the Blackhawk 2. I'm walking in front of it. Yeah, there's some little green lights or little green lines that come up when it sees something in front of it. I'm screen recording so you can see that. And now I'm gonna see if I rotate it around and push forward towards that wall, what happens.
and it stopped. You see my finger is all the way on the stick pushing forward, but the drone has stopped. And then let's see what happens with backwards, because it's supposed to be backwards and forwards. So glide away from it a little bit. And now I'll push my stick backwards. And yep, it stopped. My stick is still pushed backwards, and it stopped. Probably about 2 meters, 6 feet, maybe 8 feet away from the wall. So the stick pushed backwards. Now it does not have sideways. It does not have sideways obstacle avoidance. So just front and back.
I'll also say that EXO claims the range is something like 5 miles. Now, I don't know. It says they have some sort of proprietary transmission system that brings the video back and gives you that kind of range. I only took mine out to about half a mile, which was a little over 2,000 feet. But again, I was flying over water and I did not want it to lose signal and freak out over water. So I guess in terms of range, again, they say 5 miles. I don't know if I would trust that or not, but I certainly feel like for line of sight, where it should be at all times anyway, it's fine. It's gonna be just fine, especially if you're out in an open area. Also, it does pretty well in the wind. It's got some heft to it. This battery is not light. It is just a 3S battery, and the drone itself is not very light. So it's definitely over that 250 gram mark, so you are gonna have to register this in the US and some other countries. But that also helps it maintain itself in the wind. And I flew it in some pretty windy conditions, and the pictures look pretty good. The gimbal did a good job of stabilizing, and the drone itself did a good job of fighting the wind. One other thing I'll put in the positive column is that EXO is really trying to differentiate themselves in the drone market. I watched a video with the CEO of EXO. I'll link to that down below in the description if you want to check it out. And they really are trying to do some things differently, like providing free Part 107 classes if you buy their drone. They have their own series. I haven't seen them. I don't know how good they are. They're also really trying to push good customer service and making sure that people feel well taken care of, and just doing a little bit better job than a lot of the traditional cheaper drone manufacturers have done in the past. So I applaud them for their ideas. I have yet to see if they're actually going to do all those things, but if they do, that'll be a nice change of pace. I personally feel like Autel and DJI do a decent job with customer support, but there aren't a lot of lower end, less expensive drone makers that do, and so hopefully EXO is one of those. Now for my list of cons, which there's a few of them. They're not terrible, but there are a few things I did not like about this drone. Number one, the gimbal was not level about a third to half of the time. I'm not exactly sure, but when you would take off, the gimbal would be askew. So that was a little disappointing to see the gimbal kind of sideways, because I had some nice shots and I didn't notice it until after the fact. You can level the gimbal in the app. There is a way, and I guess because this happens, they have a button you can push. It's a little icon of a gimbal, and when you push it, there's a plus and minus, and when you push that, it kind of levels it left and right, and you can get it to where it looks good. But why? Why should you have to do that? It should be able to take care of that itself. So that was a little disappointing as far as the gimbal not being level. Number two, as I said before, the hyperlapse is just unusable. It's really, really pretty terrible, and I would have just not even included it, honestly, if I were them. I feel like they did a good job with their droney and with their orbit and some of the other features that they built in with Smart Shots, but the hyperlapse just doesn't look very good. I don't think I'm doing anything wrong. I've done hyperlapses before, but in this case, I just really don't like the way the hyperlapses look, and so I would just kind of not even consider that as something I would do with this until maybe they fix it via software. And then another small con or negative, and this comes from being a less high-end drone maker, I think. The GPS just isn't as solid. It does drift around when it's hovering. When it's sitting in front of me, especially if there's a little wind, it was kind of moving around probably 2, 3, 4 feet at a time, up and down, left and right. And when you yaw it, it tends to go up and down. It was very hard. I was trying to do some video of it just yawing and staying at the same level, but which I've done with many other drones, but this one would kind of go up and yaw and down and yaw. So it doesn't hold its position quite as well as some of the higher end drones. And then finally, I have a little bit of a problem with some of their pricing. This is supposed to be a less expensive drone, and it is to some degree, But EXO is charging $150 per extra battery. So it's $799 for one battery, $950 for two, and $1,089 or something like that for three batteries, which works out to just about $150 a battery. I'm sorry, but a little 3S battery, even with some LED lights on it, and maybe it smartly discharges like other smart batteries do, is not worth $150. And nobody wants to fly with just one battery. It's just not very feasible and not very fun. So EXO, if you're watching this, I hope you'll reconsider on your battery pricing, or maybe make it, if you buy two, you get the second one for half price and the third one for half price as well, or something like that, because 150 bucks each is just way too much for these batteries. So who is the EXO Blackhawk 2 Pro for? Well, here's my thought on this. This is a Chevrolet. This is a reliable, American-made, even though Hubsan's involved, but American marketed and American supported drone, like a Chevy. It'll get you from point A to point B. It'll take good photos and video. It'll be reliable. It has enough GPS to land where it needs to, but it doesn't have a lot of bells and whistles, and some of the bells and whistles that it tried to have just aren't quite as good as the Cadillac or Mercedes of drones, and we know who we're talking about there. So if you're a brand new drone pilot and you want to get into flying camera drones for the first time, I think this is a great option to consider. But if you're a more experienced camera drone pilot and you're just looking for another one to add to your arsenal, you might be disappointed if you've flown DJI and Autel in the past, because this is not as good a quality with as many bells and whistles as a DJI or an Autel drone. It's close. Again, it's like a Chevrolet compared to a Cadillac or a Mercedes. It's solid, it gets the job done, but it doesn't have quite as much refinement as those others do. They've been around for a long time, Autel and DJI, and they've put a lot of money in their big companies. EXO is the little guy, and I like that about them. I like the fact that EXO is trying to fill that gap between the cheap toy drones and the higher end prosumer/professional drones that are made by the big guys. It's a niche that needs to be filled, and I'm glad they're doing it, and I'm hoping that they can fulfill on all their promises in terms of their customer service being better, in terms of their reliability, and in terms of their cost being lower. So if you want to check out EXO Drones, there's links below. I'll also put the link to the interview with their CEO, which I found very interesting. He talked about how this whole market works and parts and stuff like that. Congratulations to EXO for putting out a really good drone for a decent price. And hopefully they can build on this and make this even better and sell more of them so they can keep the costs down and reduce the price of those batteries. But I'm rooting for them. And I'd love to hear your thoughts about EXO Drones. What do you think about the Blackhawk 2 Pro? What do you think about EXO Drones? And what would you like to see on the channel? Thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please hit the like and the subscribe button, and we'll see you next time on Ready, Set, Drone.